Good afternoon. I'm Jack Townsend, and today I'll be joined by Walt Ruff from the Carolina Hurricanes organization to talk about how he got into the sports media industry. What is your current position with the Carolina Hurricanes, and when did you get started?
My current position is editorial content producer and team reporter, and I started here in late September of 2021.
Okay, so pretty recent.
Yeah.
How did you get started in the sports media industry?
Well, I played sports growing up. I played baseball and hockey, and then I got to a point in high school where I knew I was never going to be professional in either playing aspect. So I had to find something of which I wanted to stay within the industry, and I knew it was either going to be in the broadcast or media side of things. And after high school, I went to college for again something along these lines. I tried a little bit of broadcasting, and I also enjoyed the communication side of things. So one thing led to another, started out in hockey, and here we are.
Where'd you actually go to college?
Started at Northampton Community College in Pennsylvania, and then went to Temple University in Philadelphia for the final 2 years.
All right, and what did you study while you were there?
My major at Northampton was radio and television, and then at Temple was media studies and production, which was kind of the school's hybrid plan. It was like if you didn't want to commit to one of journalism or video production or solely digital things, it was like the hybrid of all three or four different elements.
What would you say is the most challenging part of your job?
I think there's still a lot of learning about my position, only being here 4 or 5 months so far. But I think one of the most challenging things is balancing quality written work versus keeping up with the quantity that's expected. I love being able to keep fans updated on the team every day, but there's a difference between updating and writing. And that's something that I'm working on right now because I want to be able to produce quality like feature articles that you could pick up out of a newspaper. But at the same time, I know that we're also doing things that newspaper coverage is not for the team. For example, they're not writing a preview for every game. They're not writing a projected lineup. So it's finding the balance in updating versus quality writing. And that's probably my biggest challenge right now.
Since the pandemic started, how have you had to adapt to that? What things in your everyday life have changed with that?
Well, that threw me a curveball definitely because as I got into hockey, I was working my way up from working in junior hockey, ECHL level, and I was in the AHL level when the pandemic started. And um, I felt like I was maybe close to getting an NHL job, but I wasn't sure. Of course, those things are always hard to gauge, right? All you can ever do is apply and give it your best shot. And if it happens, great. If not, try again. But I was in Tucson, Arizona when the pandemic hit. And of course, nobody knew what was going on, right? And so about a month after the pandemic started, I was placed on furlough out there. And so I was in Arizona kind of just hanging out for 5 months because nobody knew what was going to happen. And so then I was actually back in Pennsylvania visiting family when I found out that the Coyotes were eliminating my position due to budget cuts. And so went from Arizona back to Pennsylvania, and I was with family for a couple months working just an everyday 9 to 5 job, not in sports. And I wasn't sure what the future was going to hold, honestly, because as I've said, nobody knew what was going to be next in terms of sports specifically. And I wasn't sure that I was ever going to get back into it. I thought maybe it might be, like a turning point in life where you try something different and, again, see what happens. But I was very fortunate in the sense of that my boss, the team I worked for in Texas, was working for a team in Portland, Oregon. And they were getting ready to start their season. They had a couple people who they found out were on furlough and then not coming back. And so he called me and he was like, hey, we have a really strong need here. Do you want to try it? Do you want to come back? And I was like, sure. So I went out and I lived in Oregon for 6 months, and never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that I could go from there straight to the NHL. But very grateful, very thankful for that. And it's, the past 2 years have been a wild ride, but again, I guess it's all worked out. So all I can say is how grateful I am for that.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty crazy to hear that you went from Oregon straight to the NHL, a state with no hockey at all,
Yeah,
or at least no professional hockey.
right.
What would you say your favorite part is of the job?
I get to write and talk about hockey every day and get paid for it. I mean, that was always the goal, right? Try not to take it for granted because, again, this time last year was working a job very much so outside of sports that, and, I was okay with that. I was fine with that, but it's a special feeling to be able to fulfill something you always wanted to do. So
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, and we'll get on to our last question here. Yeah, since you work with the team so closely, is it ever challenging? Are there certain players that are maybe difficult to get to try and ask them a few questions for a story, or to get them on camera for an interview? Are there any?
yeah, I think there's always going to be 20 some different players, there's coaches, there's staff, and everybody's different, right? Everybody's a different human being, and that's okay. That's what makes the world so great. And sometimes there are going to be challenges with working with certain people, but you try and keep it in perspective and think that, you know, it's not a majority thing, certainly ever. It's, maybe just one or two types of individuals that either don't give you the answers you're hoping for, or just prefer not to do media. It doesn't make them a bad person. They just, don't like being interviewed or something like that.
Yeah, I can understand that. I can definitely understand some guys. I know that when we used to have Jeff Skinner, I met him a couple times, and he barely said a couple words every time I met him. Just hey, how are you? He was a pretty shy guy, and I feel like maybe somebody like Sebastian Aho might be like that a little bit since he's from Finland and his English.
Sebastian's actually pretty good. The first person that came to mind was Tabo Teravine, and he just
There you go.
doesn't like doing media, and that's okay. He's not a bad guy. He doesn't mean anything bad by it. But he just prefers not to, and that's okay.
That's going to wrap up all the questions I have. Once again, thank you to Walt Ruff from the Carolina Hurricanes for joining me today. For the University of Alabama, I'm Jack Townsend.